Hello folks, in this video we're going to be making stripey block canes. These are stripey block canes. As you can see, I have some work here and I use them in different ways. They are great for combining all the colors together or in groupings to make wonderful veneers for all types of projects. I also use them with my Create template to make striped quilt patterns of various different kinds. I'm going to talk about how I make my colors. These are some more samples that have already been rolled out and textured, and different ways I use them. Here's another piece. And then these two here, I make pure colors, but I also use cane scrap ends to make striped canes out of my leftover cane ends. Sometimes I add a little more white, but these are the results from using those canes. And then this one, the scarf, was made from using this cane. So let me move this out of the way and we'll talk about colors. This is my Primo Clay, Stripey Primo Clay color palette that I use. And I'm going to review the colors with you first. I have zinc yellow and cad yellow. Both of these yellows, I've added 10% white into my clay. When I open the pack, I automatically do that. It bolsters the colors and makes them stand up to the other colors when you're mixing them or making canes with them. It makes them hold their yellow better. This is wasabi green, turquoise, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, fuchsia, pomegranate, cadmium red, and alizarin crimson. These colors I use all together or separately in groups, but I typically use them all together when I'm making my striped cane blocks, and you'll see more of that later. But if I wanted to make a block that was green, I might start with using yellow, wasabi, cyan, and cobalt, and use those four colors to make my green. If I wanted to make a purple, I might use all three of these blues and fuchsia and pomegranate red in different amounts to make, which is essentially going to be a purple. When you chop your clay to make these striped blocks, the chopping process actually mixes your clay. The finer you chop it, the finer your pattern will be, and the more overall impression of the color will be. In this case, using these 5, would be a purple color. Like this one right here. All right. You can see in this one, I used a little bit of cobalt, turquoise. That's the color I use for this one, this range, from cad yellow through cobalt. And, you know, differing the amounts, if I had used less of the turquoise, this would have looked more blue or more green than it does turquoise. In the center here, I have black, burnt umber, and white. These are all used for tinting and shading the colors into different darknesses and lightnesses to give you more contrast within your canes. Here you can see on this one, I added tiny bits of black into my chopped mix. And that gave me these black stripes. A little bit more about color mixing. I will also take, like this ultramarine blue, and I'll make different versions of it. This is ultramarine blue with about 50% white, maybe a little more. And this is white with just a tiny bit of ultramarine blue. And this is ultramarine blue with black. It's a very dark blue. But in chopping those, you can see here, this has a little bit of turquoise in it, but this is mostly all one color of blue with white and different levels of the same blue. So you don't have to make rainbow color blends. You can make, one specific color. This one has more of the dark in it compared to that one in my chopped mix. So you can use those. You can also, there's, of course, black, white, and gray. And then this is my burnt umber mixed with more than 50% white. And this is burnt umber with the tiniest bit of, this is white with the tiniest bit of burnt umber. And you can see it just tones down the brightness of the white. So for instance, the difference of that is, let me find one here. What the difference of that is, if you look at this green compared to this very bright white blue, instead of using white, pure white in my chopped up mixes, I will use a slightly tinted version. And that will tone down the brightness of the white within my stripes. You'll still get the contrast, but the white doesn't overpower the colors. And I like that look a lot. Here's another example of that. If you look at these earrings, all three of these stripy color blocks, including the purple, had the white toned down with a little bit of the burnt umber or a mud color. So did the leaf. But when you look at the dog head here, the whites are very bright. So it gives you much more contrast and much more stripiness from an overall view of a pattern. It still registers as blue, and this still registers as green, even though it has many blues and greens and yellows in it, but your overall color is green. But that's the difference in the whites. What I also do is I make my own mud. Now this is my mud color. It's very similar to my burnt umber. So you can use the burnt umber, but I usually mix my own. And how I make this is equal parts of all these colors, with the exception, I take out the alizarin crimson and the pomegranate. Zinc, cad yellow, wasabi, turquoise, cobalt, ultramarine blue, fuchsia, and cad red. All of those mixed together give you this mud. And what can you do with that mud? Well, when you buy pre-packaged clays that are pretty colors and you're pulling them off the shelves, they may not go together. They're selling, what buyers like to grab. I use these as my primaries, as an artist palette. And if I want to harmonize all these together, I will take the tiniest bit, and just the tiniest bit, and mix it into each one of my colors. You won't even notice it, but the colors will harmonize. Or mixing it into my white and then using that same white in all my stripey blocks will harmonize all those sheets also. Now, if you look at these two beads, they're very bright. There's lots of contrast, but all the colors go together. And that's because I have that little bit of mud in every one of them, except for this blue and white. And you can see how much contrast and how different that registers than all the other ones. These are beads I made for a group swap. Everyone had to make a bead. And we will all get a big long chain of beads when we get our swap back. So, leading on to this, we're going to go to a video that I took an excerpt out of another video I made. It's one of my videos that's in my Create Template series of videos on my YouTube channel. This video of making all these blocks, and I'm going to make a bunch of blocks in all these colors, and after the video that I'm going to insert here of how to make a chopped up block, I will come back and show you all my variations I made, and then I will proceed to make videos using those. My first video is going to be Christmas tree pins. Very simple, very easy to make, but they really give a nice graphic use to your striped cane blocks. You can also see in my other YouTube videos how I use them to make all the quilt patterns using the Create template. You can use cane ends, the ends of your canes. I've chopped all this clay. The colors I have here, I'm using cad yellow, turquoise, cobalt blue, and this is wasabi green over here. Plus then I used a little bit of black. The black, I mixed some with turquoise, I mixed some with cobalt, and I mixed some with this green color I made. So now I have some darks, I have some pure colors, and then all these colors over here was the yellow, turquoise, and wasabi mixed with white. I also have some pure white. And this is another green that I made with two of the colors. But if you're using cane ends, when you chop up your cane ends, cut thick slices and lay them flat and then chop them into squares. The chopping process, especially of canes, if you have pink and yellow and green for leaves in a cane that you're going to do, as you chop those, you are mixing the clay and mixing the colors. So the pink and yellow would make orange, but when you're chopping green into it, you're making a mud color. So just keep that in mind. I pre-chop all my colors separately. I'm going to get rid of this little piece of black. I only use that for color mixing. The next thing you do is just mix up all your colors. And after I get them tossed together good, break up some of the bigger pieces, I'm going to take a stiff blade and just chop through it some more. Sometimes when you're chopping, if your clay is too soft, you end up just making it flat onto a sheet on the bottom. So slightly dry or leached clay works a little better for this. I'm just looking for the big pieces. That's what I'm going for. I'm going to toss it around a little bit more. I'm going to use my big blade because it's stronger. And they're inexpensive, so I'm not worried about dulling it. I've had one of these for 10 years, these blades. Alrighty, a little bit more. So we have our chopped clay, and it's nice and mixed. And we're going to push it into a rectangle pile, and then we're going to compress it. Pressing in from the ends. I'm trying to keep it as a rectangle pile. And pressing down, pressing the air out of it, and pressing the pieces together. Pay a little attention to the edges because as you roll this through your pasta machine, they like to spread apart. Okay, now I'm going to release this from my work surface with my blade and flip it over and do a little more compressing. Oops. One other tool I didn't mention was a brayer. Take a brayer, and we're going to roll to compress and thin out the stack. We will be rolling this through our pasta machine on the thickest setting first. So you don't want your clay too thick. You don't want to hurt the cogwheels on your pasta machine. So brayer it, stretch it. I'm pressing with my thumbs. But you don't want to pull apart the particles and leave holes. Okay, that's good enough. Now with your pasta machine on your thickest setting, and I'm going to go through this way. I'm going to roll this on my thickest setting just once. And then we have this nice speckly pattern. Looks like linoleum. Old linoleum squares. We're going to cut this in half. And fold it over. And then we're going to roll it through one more time, the same direction. We're stretching out these spots long ways. Okay, that's my second one. Now I'm going to cut it in half one more time. Fold it in half. Some of this little excess here, I'm going to move down to the ends. And on this time, this is our third rolling through, and it's our last one. I'm going to go down one setting to my second thickest setting. Now we have these nice stripy colors all spread out. Now we're going to create a cane. These are the two I did in my previous two failed videos. You can see those. That's the top of my sheet. We're going to stack this sheet. We're going to cut this sheet up and stack it and make a stripy cane. So the first thing you do, I'll use my Lucy blade for this. Just cut that in half. And stack it together. I usually like to try to keep one nice edge. Compress it to make sure there's no air. Now we're worried about orientation here. You need to keep your stripe lines going this way. So this time I'm going to cut it in half and put it that way, pressing out the air, and half again. Each time I'm keeping the orientation of the sheet in the same order. And then I'm going to go one more time. Back here. Now, I'm going to trim off a little bit of this excess. This scrap I'll save for mixing a color that I'll use for the backing of my piece. If you see here, this was from my purple. This was from my purple color range. And after I had all the scraps, I mixed them and I have this nice purple color that I can now use on the backs of my pendants or earrings or whatever I'm going to make with these. So now what I have a nice side. I tried to keep one side where I got all my stripes nice and even. The other sides don't really matter. I am going to square it up. If you weren't watching, I wouldn't, but will be neat. So this will all be, and there, you know, this is a nice, that's a nice speckly pattern you get on from the end cuts also, but we're not using that end today. So save those for your back pieces. And since I'm working the color range I'm working in, which was yellow, wasabi, turquoise, and cobalt, that's blue through yellows. You know, I can mix that all up and I'll have a medium green color, which I can reuse for another project. Try not to create mud. We make enough of the muddy color. So here's our strip. Just to show you the amount of clay I'll be using before I start my cane blocks. I've added a second circle. These circles are 3-inch circles cut on the thickest setting of my pasta machine. I'm using 2 of each one, which is about 1/3 to 1/2 of a block of clay. I added white. I added my mud to about 2 blocks of white, and I probably won't use all this, but I use it all the time so it won't go to waste. I didn't use any extra black. I plan on making a black and white cane, but I don't know if I'll need any more of that or not. And alizarin crimson, I use very sparingly, so I didn't get another one of those. But all the rest of these are about 1/3 to 1/2 a block of clay. I've added my little bit of brown to each, my mud to each one, and I've added a tiny bit of mud to my white. I don't know how it registers on the camera, but this is pure white. This is pure white next to my mud white. It's very, very little. I can notice a difference in person here, but it is very little, just enough to tint it, to tone it down. And I'll get started on these and be back with all my stripe blocks. These are all the colors after I've mixed in the little bit of mud to each color. The scraps up here are the leftover grays, and I'll use those in some canes and my leftover sample blues that I had shown you earlier in the videos, and I'll use those also. Very little difference in the colors, but they really, that little bit of brown just really makes everything come together and match and coordinate. I will now chop all these up into their own individual colors, and then I'll start making my canes, grabbing from each pile as I go. these are the resulting canes as I went through my cycle of colors. And following this part of the video, you will see step-by-step photos that are screenshots of the process as I go through it. You will notice in them I make variations of lights and darks. I mix the scrap from every cane that I make. I use, like this one, the yellows I had left, I chopped up and used in this one. The leftover from that got used in this one, and so on, all the way around the ring. Now, when I got to here, I didn't want purple in my red. I wanted this to be a red, like a Valentine's Day red. So I left that out, and I ended up having that scrap from that was one of the colors I had the most of left over, which you'll see at the end. And then I got to the orange. And at the end, I talk about this again. I do want to make a few more. I'm going to make a black and white one and a dark red with my alizarin crimson. I need to make another one of those. I hope you enjoy these videos and screenshots. Please visit my site. It's on Facebook. It's called Blend Angles, all one word. And from that place, you can go into my photos, look at photo albums, and you can see all the items I have for sale under my Blend Angle store photo album. Enjoy the rest of the process, and I'll be back at the end. Okay, at this stage, I wanted to show you what clay I had left. I have a little bit of a raspberry color left from making this purple raspberry colored one. A little bit of fuchsia, a little bit of cad red, some leftover orangey red from between these color range. This much zinc yellow, wasabi, some turquoise, some pale mix of blue and white, my mud, my black, my alizarin. It's all the white I had left. Now, what I plan to do, let me show you the canes first. Okay, here are the 8 striped canes. So they run from yellow, yellow-green, green, turquoisey, blue, purple, a raspberry, a red like Valentine's Day red, and a fall muted orange. Now, what I'm going to do, first of all, this is a one I didn't make right now, but this is like a bright Halloween-y orange color. And that's made with one color of orange that I made that I thought was pumpkin, using yellow and red, and I made my pumpkin color. Then I made some light versions and dark versions of it, and then I added some white and chopped yellow into the mix. Then I made the same process. So that's how I got that bright orange, and that's something I use a lot in another process, in another tutorial. And but that's I'll make some more of that. This was from my last batch. So this kind of, it's not really, this I made from scraps. So I would have taken something like my fuchsia, these reds colored, and then some yellow and white, and chopped it up in there, and it looks like I have a little bit of the mud. So there, that would be a yellow into the pink. But I left the colors very separated so that I got, more variegation. That's something I could do with these. I do want to make another darker version of purple for in between here. Actually, it would probably go here with less pink in it. And but I mean, that's how much clay I have left. Okay, so I'm back, and I just wanted to show you I did use all the rest of my clay. And after my last stopping point, what I made was I took the turquoise and wasabi and a little bit of yellow that I had left, and I made this one with some white. I made my blacks and whites and grays. It's mostly black, a lot of dark grays, a little bit of white. I made my alizarin crimson, added with, it had some cad red, some of the brown, the mud color, and white, and the leftover piece of raspberry, part of that in there. The rest of the raspberry and those yellows and reds that I had left, I made this one with. So out of all of that clay that I started with, I added one more block of white to finish up my last few canes. I added a little more blue and cobalt blue and ultramarine blue than I started with. But out of all of that, this is all the scrap I have left. A little piece of dark gray, my mud color, some raspberry, and some bluish green there. That's it. I used every bit, no scraps. Now, when you cut these slices, first of all, so make sure you all understand there's 2 sides. I need to cut this one. There's the stripe side, the long stripes, and somehow that got dirty. So I'm going to cut that off and show you the nice speckle pattern. Okay, there's the nice speckle pattern. Show it both ways. Turn my light down a little bit. And that has some brown in it. And then there's, of course, the stripes. Now, when you go to run these through your pasta machine, usually I take a nice thick slice. If I'm going to be working on a bunch of, projects all at once, I'll take a slice thicker than this, maybe a good 1/8 of inch solid thick slice, maybe a little thicker. But when you run it through the pasta machine, you want to run it through so that it stretches the lines long way. That will also, any little crookedness, it will straighten out your lines. And I'll show you on this one. Well, this is going to be pretty thin. Okay, and it also widens them out. So that, now I have that, I can use as a veneer over top of scrap clay. But, when you stretch it out, always stretch it out long ways. And I'll stretch this one out for you. Now, these are first cuts, so they may not be as nice as when you get in the center. But that's the speckly pattern. And this one, the speckly pattern, you can go wide if you want. You can run it through wider. It'll just spread everything out wider. But there you have it. Happy claying. I hope you get a chance to watch my other videos and be looking for some more. Like I said, I will be doing the Christmas tree pin video very soon before Christmas 2020. Thank you.